Hey, morning everyone. Again, I'm Kenny. I'm the lead pastor here at The Crossing, and we just want to thank you for tuning in if you're still with us. And I want to just do a special shout out right now to all the moms who are watching. And I realize this is a different kind of Mother's Day. And I've also probably realized this is a great time to just illustrate that the grass seems always greener on the other side. Let me tell you what I mean by that. I know there's a lot of moms right now that have probably been isolated, been sitting at home doing the self-quarantine thing, and your children are grown or they're just not with you. And so maybe you've been doing this kind of alone, and this Mother's Day is a real bummer for you because you haven't had a chance to see them. And so I understand it's difficult. And then you have the moms who have been quarantined in for the last 7-8 weeks with their children, and you're maybe looking at them thinking, man, I wish I could be with my kids. But you have the mothers who've been quarantined in for the last 7-8 weeks who have not been away from their kids, and they're probably looking at you and thinking, man, I would do anything to have that peace and quiet. As a matter of fact, I would bet right now, moms, if you're there alone and you're missing some kids, if you would put your address in the comments, that there would be moms who have kids who have been quarantined with them for 8 weeks that would have them delivered and dropped off at your house before I'm even done with this message. That's what I believe. The reality is, I know this has been a challenging Mother's Day, probably more so than ever, but I still want to take this time to say to all you moms out there, happy Mother's Day. And if you're sitting in that room right now with your mom, if you're fortunate enough to be able to do that, you need to go up and give them a big hug and a kiss right now. I'll wait. And tell them how much you love them and wish them a big happy Mother's Day. If your mom isn't with you because you're somewhere else, then don't text them. Give them a call as soon as this service is over with. Hey, I'm coming to you right now because we're doing a series called Calm. And so today I wanted to come to a place that's very calming. And so I am standing here on a dock at the middle of the lake of Woodland Lakes Christian Camp. And the reason I wanted to do that is because we're doing a series called Calm that's been based loosely on the book Anxious for Nothing by Max Lucado. But one of the things is, right now it is really calm here. But if you've ever been to a week of camp, when camp is in full swing, if you've ever been here on a Sunday, it is not calm at all. As a matter of fact, you have kids excited because they get to be away from mom and dad. They're seeing their friends for the very first time since maybe last summer, so they're pumped. But then on the other side, you have an anxiousness and an anxiety, maybe for some parents, because this may be the first time they have ever been away from you. My girls have never let me forget the first time I dropped them off at church camp at a camp down in Georgia. Somehow they found out. I don't know if Cindy told them or maybe I confessed in a moment of weakness, but I got home and I was so miserable knowing they were going to be gone that I went and laid down on their beds and bawled my eyes out. And they have not let me forget that, to the point where when I dropped them both off at college, they said, Dad, we know what you're going to do. You're going to go home and you're going to lay down on the bed and you're going to bawl. Sadly, they were right. I did. So camp can be a very fun time, but it could also be an anxious time. And one of the things is I was thinking back, when I was a youth minister, my favorite week of the year was I got a chance to dean a senior high week and a junior high week camp. So 2 weeks of every year I got to dean camps in a camp down in North Carolina and then again in Tennessee and even up in Ohio. But one of the things that's interesting is the more you would work with these kids, the more you start to notice there was a rhythm to this. Because come Sunday, they would get here, and I mean, they were wild, and they were crazy, and they were like all over the map. And I'll admit there was even a little bit, as a dean, a little bit of some discipline issues, because you were trying to calm them down. You were trying to get them to follow the rules and follow the schedule and not be late and be quiet when we're doing this and that. And so really, Sunday and Monday, and even part of Tuesday, could be kind of wild and crazy at a week of camp. But every week was the same. Sometime around Tuesday night or Wednesday, there was a change. You see, at the beginning of the week, let's face it, some kids were just too cool to be there. They were like, I would rather be anywhere but here. And they wanted to let people know that by the way they acted, the way they looked. They didn't want to be there. They wanted to be with their friends, or they wanted to be doing this, do that. We don't want to do this and that. But something changed. Because by the time Tuesday night rolls around, Wednesday night, all of a sudden you could see it in every single one of those campers that they all of a sudden became all there. They were all there. They were dialed in. It was like they were spending time doing things they hadn't done before. They were spending time having quiet time with God in the morning. They were spending time at the chapel and hearing some very compelling, relevant messages. They were worshiping. They were listening to Christian music that they had never heard before because it sounded nothing like Christian music. And there was just a change. And it was such a transformation that the reality is, this is the truth, every week of camp this happened. Somewhere around Thursday or Friday, there would be a moment where the entire camp was on the same page, and I called it, they would get in the zone at the foot of the throne. I mean, that's the way it was. It was like everybody was in the zone and everybody was at the foot of the throne. And here's the amazing thing that would happen. By the time that week of camp was over with, even the ones who were trying to look like, I don't want to be here, I'm too cool, so many of them would come with tears in their eyes saying this: I wish I didn't have to leave. I wish I could stay. Why? What changed? What happened? Well, what happened was the things that their minds were fixed on was different than before camp. And so the entire time they were there, their minds started fixating on other things. And so what happened was their minds were changed. Everything was changed in how they experienced camp. And it changed everything for many of them. And so today I want to talk about the importance of that. I want to talk about the importance of where our mindset is as we continue to talk about how to find some calm in all this chaos. You know, Paul talks a lot about that what we think about can bring us peace. And I would say that many of us right now probably need to be able to change our minds and the mindset we've been in by what we're fixing our minds on. You know, we've been looking at this passage of scriptures in Philippians chapter 4, verses 4 through 9 through this whole series. And I'm going to just read again, and then we'll fix our thoughts on what he has to say. Verse 4, always be full of joy in the Lord. I say it again, rejoice. Let everyone see that you are considerate in all you do. Remember, the Lord is coming soon. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all that He has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. And this is what we're going to focus on for the rest of the day. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Keep putting into practice all that you learned and received from me, everything you heard from me and saw me doing. And then the God of peace will be with you. I guess I got to ask the question, where has your mind been these days? I want you to take a moment and think about what you've been thinking about. Think about what you've been thinking about. You see, many of us have been dwelling on a lot of things. Our minds have been consumed and fixated on a lot of things right now. We're dwelling on things like what we're missing out on. We're thinking, man, I feel like I missed out on this, or I'm missing out on that, and we're dwelling on that. We're focusing on the mess of what's going on around us. We are filling our minds with the good old days. Oh man, I just want to go back to normal. I just want to go back to the good old days when things weren't like this. We're looking ahead because we want to look ahead, look down the road. Like we want to hurry up and get back to some kind of normal. What we've been thinking about has been fearful. It's been stressful. It's been overwhelming. It's just been something that has created an unsettling or a worry in us. And the thing is when we really start to think about what we are thinking about, it's really hard not to think a lot. You know, our frantic lifestyles where we've always been on the go and rushing around and just totally frantic has come to a grinding halt. But here's the interesting thing is everything has changed. Everything has shut down. And for many of us, it has been for 7, maybe 8 weeks. And things have changed. My goodness. I mean, we've been on like what seems like an 8-week snow day. I mean, do you remember how we would usually, like, our kids would turn their jammies inside out and they'd do the snow dance so that they could get a snow day because they'd want a day or two? Do you remember as parents, we think, you know, I'd give anything right now just to have a snow day where all we have to do is we don't even have to get out of our PJs. We could just stay in our loungewear and we can Netflix and binge watch and pop popcorn. Oh man, that would be great. Well, it would be if it didn't last for 8 weeks. Because for 8 weeks now, a lot of us have been in our PJs, loungewear, watching Netflix, popping popcorn. You know, this pandemic has changed some things already, but I guarantee you one of the things it's going to change is when it comes to school, we're going to be very careful when it comes to praying for snow days. Because we don't want to have to be stuck in our house for this long ever again. You see, there's been this shift. We are still on the run, but here's the difference. We are not on the run physically so much as now our minds are constantly on the run. We are constantly stressing out. What have you been fixing your thoughts on? What worries are consuming you right now? You cannot get it off of your mind. I heard about a woman who couldn't sleep at night because she was worried that her home would be burglarized. Well, one night in the middle of the night, her husband heard a noise downstairs. And so he got up, he went downstairs to check and see what was going on. And when he went around the corner, sure enough, there was a burglar in the middle of their living room. And he says, I don't know what you're doing, but could you come up and meet my wife because she's been waiting for you for 10 years. What is it that you've been waiting for, worrying about, stressing over for the last 10 years, the last 10 weeks, the last 10 days, some of you maybe even in the last 10 minutes? What is it that has consumed you? You see, before COVID-19, we all had a lot on our mind, but we had an escape or a distraction or something to kind of take our mind off the worries, maybe to kick them down the road a little bit. You know, we had the distraction of sports. As a parent or as a grandparent, I know that we enjoyed watching our kids play sports. And sometimes it was a welcome distraction. It was an escape. Well, that's not happening right now. Or we would love to watch pro sports or college sports. We'd watch it on TV or maybe even go down to the ball yard. And that would be a 2 or 3 or 4 hour escape. Well, that's not happening right now. And then there were other distractions like shopping. We could go shopping to take our mind off of things. Now, it's getting ready to be where retail is opening up again, but for the last 6 weeks, we haven't been able to do that. You know, that local hangout where everybody knows your name, whether it be a bar or a barber shop, they've been closed. The spa where you could go and get a massage and just let your cares melt away, closed. We haven't been able to go on vacation. We haven't been able to go camping. We haven't been able to go to the library, the playground, or the park. We haven't even been able to go to the church building to be able to hang out with all of our church friends. And then there's our jobs. A lot of us have lost our jobs, or we've been furloughed or been temporarily laid off. Some of us have been essential from day one, and so you've had to go to work while everybody else has been staying home. And when you were working, you were just hoping that this virus that's unseen hasn't made its way into your workplace and you weren't going to bring it home. And then there are all those who've been working from home remotely. I don't know about you, but I'm starting to find that the drive into work and the drive back from work was a way for me to clear my mind. But when you work from home, you never have that moment of separation. You never have that opportunity to clear your head. And what I'm finding now is even though I'm not going anywhere, I'm always working. I'm always on the clock. I'm always thinking. And I'm sure if you're like me, if you've been doing Zoom calls all week long, you're finding that that is extremely draining. And yet all of those things were things that we would normally do to escape or to be a distraction from the stress, the worries. But most of that's postponed, canceled, or closed. So what do we do now to fill our minds? What do we do to fix our minds on things? Well, we binge watch Amazon Prime, Netflix, Disney Plus. And some of us have been so desperate for sports. Come on, admit it, folks. You've been watching the NFL draft from years past. I mean, that's pretty desperate when you're watching the NFL draft from like years ago, or you're watching baseball games from years ago. That's how much we miss sports. Some of us go to social media, Twitter, Facebook, and we just scroll down. We scroll through TikTok just to pass the time, and we're watching all this stuff. And of course, we know that when you do that, there's such great commentary. There's so many great opinions. There are so many things that people believe is the solution to all the problems of our world. And when we're reading that, what we find is that when we set our minds on some of the stuff we're reading, it either gets our blood to boiling or our minds to spinning. The 24-hour news cycle, it's been all COVID-19 all the time. It's been all about the spread, the deaths, the shortages, the curve, let's flatten the curve, the vaccine. How long is this going to last? What's the economic impact going to be? It's been all COVID-19 all the time. And a lot of what we think about doesn't just change our minds, it changes our outlooks as well. How many of us lately have become extremely pessimistic, extremely negative, extremely cynical? On a lighter note, let me just give you an example. If you live around the Cincinnati Reds, Cincinnati Bengals area, and I know many of you do, isn't it amazing? See if this is something you haven't said. All right? If this isn't something you thought about. This was the year. This was the year that the Reds finally had a team that could win it all. They finally had a chance to make the playoffs, and it would figure that this is the year the season will probably be canceled. They'll all be free agents and sign for another team another time. Or it would just figure that you can't go to the games and see them live, but they're going to play in Arizona. This was going to be their year. This was it. Or if you're a Bengals fan, I mean, you are excited about Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's it. But if you're under the age of 30, you're optimistic. It's going to be a new day for the Who Day. But if you're over the age of 30, you're more pessimistic. Why? Because you remember the number one pick, Kajana Carter, blowing out his knee in the very first preseason game. You remember drafting the can't-miss quarterback prospects of David Klingler and Achilles Smith. They were can't-miss quarterbacks. Now, some of you who are under age 30 are saying, who? Exactly. You just proved my point. You see, when it comes to Joe, we want to believe that this will change things, but the reality is, because many of us have become bungalized, we're pessimistic. We want to have good thoughts, but we can't. Ralph Waldo Emerson said just as much. He said this: beware of what you set your mind on, because that you surely will become. Beware of what you set your minds on, what you think about all the time, because that is what you will become. Well, if that's the case, if what we fix our minds on all the time is what we will become, let me just go out on a limb right now. Many of us have become a mess. We've become a mess because all we think about is this mess that we're in. All we think about is how things seem so out of control. And so that is why Paul makes such a big deal when we're talking about finding peace in the chaos, in the midst of panic, finding calm. That's why Paul makes a big deal about fixing our thoughts and minds on the right things and in the right places. You see, Paul is giving us a plan to change what we are becoming. He's giving us a pathway to more peace and less anxiety. And it starts with changing the way we think. Again, Philippians 4:8, fix your thoughts, set your mind on. Fix your thoughts. Fix your thoughts, set your mind on the things that you will think about. He meant it so much that in 2 Corinthians 10:5, he even went farther when he talked about thoughts. When he said this, that we should take every one of our thoughts captive. Every thought has to be taken captive. Now, I know if you're like me, you've had a chance to watch some TV. And if you've watched any TV, if you watched any movies, there's usually a time when somebody that's a bad guy goes to meet another guy. And maybe it's an enemy who's going to meet the head of the other army. And what happens? They always come in, and before they can meet the big guy in charge, there was always these goons or these security guards who will pat them down to check and see if they have any weapons on them or anything that would be a danger or harm them. And so they would pat them down, and if they saw nothing, they would then let them go and meet whoever it was they were going to meet. Well, that's exactly what Paul's talking about. He's talking about every one of our thoughts that come to us. We need to pat them down, so to speak. We need to vet them. We have to decide if those thoughts are going to be dangerous for us or are they going to be harmless. And I'm going to go out on a limb right now and say during this pandemic that if you're tuning in right now, that there's a good likelihood that a lot of the thoughts that have been coming into your mind have been dangerous ones. You've been letting harmful things get into your space. And so Paul tells us to fix our thoughts on what is true, what is honorable, what is right and pure and lovely and admirable. And he says to think about these things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Now, a couple quick observations before we move on. One, the fact that you can take everything captive means that you have a choice. It means that we can. He didn't say you don't have a chance, just don't worry about it. He says take every thought captive. That means that we have an opportunity, we have a choice to decide we're going to let it through or we're going to send that thought a-packing. We're going to let it come in or we're going to keep it out. So we have a choice with every thought. The other thing I want you to notice is Paul isn't telling us what to stay away from. When he goes through this list, he isn't saying, here are the thoughts that you should not think about. You shouldn't think about this, you shouldn't think about that. He's actually proactive. He says, think about these things. Think about the good stuff. He doesn't list all the things we shouldn't think about. He lists things that should take up space in our thoughts. Now, I don't know why he went that route, but I can tell you just from a practical standpoint, it sure works better for me when you list the positive things as opposed to negative things. Let me just give you an example. Let's use food. Let's say you're wanting to eat healthier because you know eating healthier is better for you. And so if that's the case, it's probably better not to lead with, do not fix your thoughts on things like Grater's Buckeye Blitz or coconut almond chip. Do not fix your mind on Frisch's Big Boys with extra tartar sauce. By all means, whatever you do, don't think of fair food. Don't think of fried pickles, fried Snickers bars. Don't think of fried Twinkies. Do not do that. No Cincinnati chili. Don't think about that. And for crying out loud, whatever you do, do not think about the Cheesecake Factory. Don't do it. Do not think about it. Now, here's the thing. If I just went through that list, what are you doing right now? That's all you're thinking about. You're thinking, that idiot, I can't even go to these places right now, and he has to bring all that up. And so now you're consumed with the gazillion flavors of cheesecake that you've missed out on for a while. So Paul gives us a list of things that we should think about rather than things that we shouldn't think about. He kind of helps us out by giving us this filter, this lens to run things through, like to fix our thoughts on what is true, what is honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable, and think about these things that are excellent and most praiseworthy. So the first thing is it true? That may take some work in this world that we live in, because this world offers a lot of slick promises that are too good to be true. Or we've got so much on social media where we don't know if it's a scam, if it's satire. A lot of times we think, well, you know what, since my friend shared it, I'm going to pass it on because my friend wouldn't lie to me. And we find out that we're sending off stuff that maybe isn't completely true. It kind of reminds me of, remember back in the day when we used to stand in crowded grocery store aisle lines and, you know, at the checkout counter, and there'd be people that piled stuff on. So while you're standing there knowing it's going to be a while, you see these magazines on the end cap, the National Enquirer and the Sun and all that. And you would see this and you would read the front page and it would say something like, Elvis has been spotted with Amelia Earhart in a tropical island. Or the vaccine to COVID-19 is all tied into Sasquatch. So if we can find Sasquatch, we can find the vaccine. And so you would read stuff like that and you would kind of chuckle or like, that doesn't sound real. But what's happening is with our social media, a lot of the stuff we read and we pass on, it isn't true, or it's maybe a fabrication, or there's a twist on the truth. See, the point is, Paul says we need to fix our thoughts on what is true. And so that means we got to really work through it, because not to fix our thoughts on the latest rumor or the latest juicy gossip, not on hearsay, but what is true. And right now, there's this distrust of government. Well, they lied to us. It could be that they're telling us what they believe is the truth, but they're just not delivering on it. There's just so much question and trust in social media and the news is depending on, is it news or is it opinion? Somebody putting their spin on it? Here's what I know when it comes to fixing my thoughts on that which is true. There's a lot of things that are flying at me. Doesn't have a lot of truth in it. The only place we can really find our truth is in the Word of truth, in the Word of God. And Jesus even said, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. And so we need to be more in His Word so we could be able to fix our minds on what's true. Is it noble? Is it honorable? Is it worthy of respect, or is it disrespectful? Sometimes it's hard to find things that are honorable. We take things so lightly, and we make fun of things. And the question is it worthy of respect, or are we being ridiculous? Is it right? Not is it right in my eyes or in my friend's eyes or in the court of public opinion. Is it right in the eyes of God? Because that's what matters. Is it pure? Is it clean? Is it wholesome? Or is it corrupt and damaging not only to you and your mind, but to others? Think about purity when it comes to even your thought life. Is your thought life pure? The things that you're doing that nobody else can see, is it pure? Would you want it to be broadcast on some big, drive-in screen for all your friends and family to watch? Psalm 119:9 says, how can a young person stay pure? By obeying God's word. Is it lovely? Does it attract other lovely thoughts, speech, or acts? Or is it something that attracts hate and disrespect? Is it admirable? Does it build other people up? Or is it destructive and negative? Is it morally excellent? Is it something that will help someone live a godly life? Or is it someone that's going to pull people away from living a godly life? Is it worthy of praise? Does it cause us to rise up and applaud? Or is it something that makes us want to sit down out of shame? You see, Paul is telling us to choose to fix our thoughts on things that are positive, not negative, things that build up, not tear down, things that are constructive, not destructive. And then he wraps it up. He wraps it all up by saying this in verse 9. Keep putting into practice all you learned and received from me, and everything you heard from me and saw me doing. And then the God of peace will be with you. We've been talking about this whole series. In order to find calm, we need to celebrate what the Lord has done. We need to, as Jai said, ask Him. Ask of Him. And then Jay said last week, we need to leave it with Him. And today, what Paul is saying is we need to meditate, we need to fix our minds on Him. And so when we celebrate, and when we ask, and when we leave, and when we meditate, what we see is we will find calm. We will find peace. I came across this, and I don't know how you measure this, but someone apparently did the study that every single one of us have about 10,000 thoughts a day. 10,000 thoughts a day. I don't know how you count that. Some may have more, some may have less, but 10,000 thoughts a day. That means that you're going to have approximately 3.5 million thoughts per year. If you live to be the age of 75, you will have 262 million different thoughts. That's a lot of thoughts to be taken captive. 10,000 times a day, you're having to take your thought captive and decide what you're going to fix your mind on. And every one of those 10,000 thoughts presents a choice. Am I going to think about this, or am I going to think about that? Am I going to let this in, or am I going to send it away because it's harmful? So I ask you again, what has your mind been on lately? What is it? I want you to think about what you've been thinking about. What is it you are always thinking about? Betty Sue Kelly said this, 2 thoughts cannot occupy the mind at the same time. So the choice is whether or not our thoughts will be constructive or destructive. 2 thoughts cannot occupy our minds at the same time. So is the thought that I'm going to entertain going to be worshipful or worrisome? Is the thought that I'm going to entertain going to be panic-stricken or prayer-driven? Is it going to bring chaos into my mind and into my life, or is it going to bring calm? You see, Paul tells us to think about what we think about, because when we think about these things, when we fix our mind on these things, then we will experience the peace of God who is with us. Isaiah 26:3 says the same thing. You will keep in perfect peace all who trust in him, all whose thoughts are fixed on God. So 10,000 thoughts a day. God gives us 10,000 thoughts a day, and we have the freedom to choose whether we're going to entertain those thoughts, let it take up some space in our heads, or whether we're going to send it away because it's harmful. We need to think about what we're thinking about. And what I know will happen, because I saw it happen at a camp just like this, is you can see your mind change when you think about what you think about. When those teens came onto that camp and they started fixing their mind on the Word of God, fixing their mind on things that were admirable and worthy of praise, when they started spending time thinking of things that were pure, lovely, respectful, then what we saw happen is their minds were transformed and they didn't want to go anywhere else. They wanted to stay there. And so if we're looking for peace right now, then we need to start looking more carefully at what we're looking at and what we're thinking. And we need to fix our thoughts on the things that Paul said. Because if we do, it will truly change our minds. So pray with me. God, I thank you so much for Paul. I thank you that he has given us really a pathway, a way for us to really think through the things that come at us. God, we need to take so seriously, we need to vet every thought that comes to us, because some of those thoughts could be good, but some of them could be so damaging and so harmful. And right now our thought lives are under siege because of all the things that are coming at us, and we are just distracted by so many things. So God, I just pray that we would spend more time investing it into your word, thinking of those thoughts, thinking of the things that are the truth, that are pure, that are lovely and admirable. So God, I just thank you for this opportunity to be here in this setting, this beautiful camp, a camp that does incredible ministry for this region. And God, while I know right now maybe it's not as chaotic as it would be when camp is full go, God, I just pray for the day when Sundays and Fridays will be crazy here again, when kids can come and have their minds transformed and find the peace that can be found in you. And I pray this in the name of Jesus, the Prince of Peace. Amen. Okay, so thanks again for joining us. We cannot wait to see you next week, but don't leave, because we have a worship song coming up. I'm getting ready to actually go and worship with you. Join us next week for the Psalm 23 Backpacks series, and I'm out of here.